What's your story? What's up, my friends? Jason Woodland back again with Always the Journey TV. Today we are representing episode number 68. So rocking and rolling out here in the community and learning about all kinds of amazing people. Again, this podcast slash TV show is all about spotlighting people to learn more about their businesses, their jobs, their music, their art, their side hustles, their event space, and everything in between. So thank you very much for joining us. I sincerely appreciate it. I would ask if you could, please subscribe to the channel. That would mean the world. And then also, if you have any questions, please throw them down in the comments for anybody who I'm interviewing. And throw us a thumbs up if you enjoy the content, which I know you do. So thank you so much. Again, it really means a lot that you tune in and watch our TV show. Anyway, today I'm extremely excited about introducing to you a very dear friend, Cathy Campbell. Cathy has been a business attorney for over 35 years. She works with business owners to limit risk while maintaining and growing profitability. Cathy also provides fractional general counsel services to smaller companies not yet ready to hire in-house counsel by providing general counsel services on an as-needed basis. Cathy's expertise includes preventing and resolving legal issues in commercial relationships by drafting, reviewing, and negotiating day-to-day commercial contracts, as well as more complex contractual agreements in the merger, acquisition, and divestiture process. She can assist with ensuring the company's books and records are in order and the appropriate compliance procedures are in place. Business succession planning is also one of Cathy's specialties. She has represented many clients who are seeking to buy or sell a business to ensure that her clients truly understand what they are buying or selling and that it is negotiated and documented properly. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to introduce my dear friend, Cathy Campbell. What's happening?
Not much. Just here talking with you.
Heck yeah. So I'm so glad that you're on the show. I appreciate you accepting my invitation.
It's an honor.
Thank you so much. So yeah, definitely excited to have you here. We're excited to jump in and learn about your history and what got you into the realm that you're specializing in. And then we'll sort of deep dive on some of those things. But Cathy, tell us a little bit about where did you grow up?
So I was born in Jersey and I was raised in Texas. We moved to Texas when I was about 9. I was in Houston until I was about 31, 32. And then I was transferred to Utah for my job.
Okay. So you lived in New Jersey from birth till about 9 years old, right?
Yep.
And then down to Texas. And you were in Texas for the pretty long period of time then.
Really long period of time.
All right.
Yeah. I never thought I would leave Texas. Now I don't want to go back.
All right. Well, I'm glad that you made it to Utah. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
What was one of your favorite things about growing up in Texas?
I think having a beach nearby. We took beach vacations. Every summer we went to South Padre Island. And then on the weekends with friends, we would drive to Galveston and hang out at the beach. So
Nice.
That might be it. And absolutely the best food in the world. Houston has the absolute best restaurants in the world.
That's awesome. I've got some family down there in the Houston area, but I've actually never been to Houston. I've just been up into the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
It's where my brother and sister and their families live.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Texas is a huge place. And they always say, what is it? Everything in Texas is bigger. And it's true. Like everything is just huge. It's like everybody's got big cars and big buildings and the cities are monstrous.
Everything's huge. Steak, drinks.
The whole 9 yards.
Margaritas.
Oh, that's cool. So tell us a little bit about your experience in high school. What was high school like? Can you sort of elaborate on that a little bit?
Oh, high school and I did not get along very well. I was one of the, I don't even know if I should say this out loud. I was a head. And you have to be really old to even understand what that was. We were kind of the bad kids. And I had terrible acne. And with Houston humidity, I had frizzy, awful hair. but I was somehow managed between skipping school and doing other bad things, managed to take my studies very seriously. So I was able to graduate. And yeah, it was that. I would have to say high school those were not my best, happiest years. I wasn't one of those popular people, but I've
Hey,
come out of that shell.
oh, absolutely, because you're extremely popular now. So
I didn't mean it that way, but
no, I think that is the case. I mean, everybody knows Cathy, the business attorney, so that's a very positive thing. And don't feel alone. I think a lot of people didn't find themselves really in high school. It was, I think, a rough time for a lot of kids. I think I'm an anomaly. I loved high school. I am crazy, but I loved high school. And I was also a wild kid, but I think wild in different manners, possibly. But
yeah. Yeah, you and I have talked about our past.
absolutely. So tell me, like, what was the inspiration? Did you think that you were going to be an attorney back in high school, or what was the path outside of high school?
You know, I think like most people in high school who are kind of groomed to go to college, my parents were both, although middle class, were highly educated. And education was always a big thing in our family. And it was always assumed we would all go on to college. And I went to college with absolutely no idea what I was going to be when I grew up. And when you think about it, we asked 17 and 18-year-olds to kind of choose a major, and you haven't worked, maybe at Arby's. I mean, how do you know what you want to be when you grow up? So I immediately, due to my lacking math and science skills, went into a liberal arts, I guess you would say, program. And I was a Spanish major. So, needless to say, when you graduate from college with a Spanish major, the opportunities are not, they don't come knocking on your door. However, I did want to be president in high school and college, and I wanted to be a cop. I tried to apply for the FBI, and my eyesight was so poor back then. There weren't ways to correct your eyeballs, and you couldn't wear contacts or glasses and be recruited by the FBI. So I decided to go to law school, and I think one of my motivating forces for that, it's as crazy and cheesy as it sounds, once again dating myself, one of my favorite shows was Hill Street Blues. And on Hill Street Blues, I don't know if anyone watching this remembers the show, but there was a very strong public defender attorney who was a woman. And back then it was kind of unusual to have an attorney on a cop show and have that be a woman, and a strong woman at that. And I think that I kind of always sort of idolized that, just that perception that I had about a strong woman doing good. So that, I think that took me from college into law school.
Wow. Okay, cool. So, and this is all taking place in Texas still, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so you were going to college in Houston.
Well, in Texas, yeah.
In Texas in general. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Wow. Okay. So you got so you majored in Spanish. Do you speak Spanish fluently?
Absolutely not.
I know what you mean.
I think you have to live there. You have to live somewhere to really be able to speak it. Now, I will tell you, my favorite place and where I plan to retire, and I just actually bought a condo, is Mexico. And I can understand almost anything anyone says, not obviously in a technical sense. I couldn't talk to I actually couldn't talk to an engineer in English and understand what they were saying. But I can understand, I can read it, but I'm not very good at, I just don't speak it well. I'm going to plan to, though, one of these days.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very, very important to learn as many languages as we can, if
Mm-hmm.
possible. It's definitely easier said than done for sure.
Yeah.
When I was in the system, and this kid was 8 years old, and he was standing there in a suit, and he was just standing there all like, serious looking. And one of the guys I was with sort of leaned down. He's like, "Hey, you're a cute little guy. What's your name?" He said, "My name is," and said his name. And he said, "What is your name, sir?" And I'm like, "Wow." And he said, "Well, how old are you?" And he said, "I'm 8 years old." And his dad said, "Yeah, he's fluent in 5 languages also."
It's
At
crazy.
8 years old. I thought, wow, that was just fascinating.
It's just crazy how we Americans don't value, I think, knowing multiple languages. And I think we take for granted the fact that, we've most people, certainly in business, speak English. And I think therefore we've gotten kind of lazy about studying and learning other languages, and certainly cultures as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think trying to learn language in different cultures is one of the most important things we can do as humanity, to understand one another. Not just from language, but really understanding history and culture and all that kind of stuff is just imperative. So yeah, that's cool. So you decided to go to law school. So you're like, okay, so this is what I'm going to do. This is my path. Tell us a little bit about your experience in law school. Was it a tough experience? Did it come easy for you? And what were some of the classes that you thoroughly enjoyed?
So when you come out of college, and you get out of college, and really to get into law school, or probably MBA school, you do have to have pretty high grades. You have to have a really high GPA. So I think that all of the people, and we were warned this basically during orientation, that you think you're really smart, but now you're in a different pool. It's a different sea of fish, so to speak, and everybody here is. And I know for me, high school and college were a breeze. I just soared through, no big deal, no problem. And man, that first year of law school kicked my ass. Kicked my ass. Not only intellectually, but just, physically and emotionally, it was so hard. And then I will say the next 2 years, I think once the fear factor is gone that first year and you've actually survived, because a lot of people drop out that first year. I think when you survive that first year, then you're like, okay, now I can breathe. I got that one under my belt. And the next 2 are a little bit easier. Plus, it also helps you focus more on what you actually want to specialize in after that first year of having a smattering of different classes.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah.
I know that there was a period of time in my 20s that I was thinking about going to law school myself, and I've always been infatuated with understanding the law and trying to sort of interpret the law. And I had the opportunity to go to work for a law firm as a business and a credit analyst, and it was a really phenomenal time. And I always would take the legal journals that would come in, and I'd try to read up on all the legal journals. And I always loved reading law books and everything. Yes, I'm a glutton for punishment because I did that for fun.
Yeah, really. You have to be.
Without a doubt. So that's interesting. So the first year was extremely intense. Were you having to work also, or did you get to focus on school full time?
No, I was lucky. I was living at home. I went to the University of Houston Law School. So I just lived at home with mom and dad, and I didn't have the room and board that a lot of my peers did. And I always worked, like all summers and Christmas vacations, spring breaks. I never took a year off after high school or college, to travel the world. I just went straight to work. So I had saved up enough money that I could back then afford tuition and books. Now, I did start clerking my second year, and my third year I was able to move out and get a little apartment because I was also clerking at the same time.
Oh, okay. So you went from high school to college, from college to law school.
Oh, well, there was a short marriage between college and law school. So I took a year off. Well, I graduated college in 3 years and I didn't apply in time for to make it into law school thereafter. So I had to wait a year, and there was a little starter marriage slipped in there. Um,
That's
and
awesome.
didn't last long. Anyway, yeah, so true. But I worked that whole year.
Okay, cool. That's awesome. So regarding that, would you recommend for someone listening to this, maybe in their youth, would you recommend someone going straight to college out of high school or going to some kind of a professional degree structure if college is their track anyway? Or would you recommend them taking a year or two off to travel or work or do something else? Like, do you have any initial thoughts on that?
You know, I will say that I was always jealous of the people who got to take that year off and travel the world because I'm not very well traveled. Once you start working, it's kind of hard to go and travel multiple places, and then then you have a family, and um, I don't know. Part of me, and I'm a little bit traditional when it comes to education. Part of me thinks that I think you can lose focus if you take, time off, and it's a great time. You're traveling, you're learning new things, but I wonder sometimes if you lose focus on education. Now, for some people, college isn't the right thing. One of my sons, he's not college bound. And I used to be kind of a snob about going to college and getting a 4-year degree. And I've completely changed my thought about that. I am a big proponent of, unless you really want to go to college and academia comes naturally to you. I've become a big proponent of community college, trade school. Take a few different things that you might be interested in, whether it's fashion design or barber, becoming a barber or electrician, and really seeing what you have an affinity for and what you do well. And then, I think there's absolutely nothing wrong. And I think it can be incredibly satisfying to get the right certification or the right 2-year associate's degree and go right to work. You intern a good portion of that time. So you are on the job learning. And I think that that's a fabulous option. But, once again, it's hard for me to talk about taking the time off. I think it would be, you do learn a lot by going to different countries and learning different cultures. And I think that there is a lot to be said for that too. I'm just envious of those who got to do it.
Yeah, I totally respect that. And I think I think there really needs to be a sort of a deep dive sort of analysis of the person and what they're trying to accomplish because when I was in high school, like that was my immediate thought was I'm just going to go straight to college and right after high school I started taking some classes and I was just sort of floating around and then I thought, you know what, I'm not going to do college. And then I went through a small stint where I was like, I don't need college, I don't need to do this and all this. And I spent a few years, doing a little bit of traveling and working in different jobs and so forth. And then I think it was actually when I was 23 when I'm like, yeah, you know what, I'm going to bounce back, and then finished a couple of bachelor's degrees, and
Right.
then that was about a 3.5 year or so process. And at this point, I also am with you. It's like, hey, it's not everybody's track, but there needs to be some kind of a track. Otherwise, you can really just sort of float forever. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting. Okay, so when you graduated college or when you graduated law school, sorry, did you go to work directly for yourself at that point, or did you
Oh
go to
God,
a law
no.
firm?
No. I had clerked the year before, my 3rd year at a law firm. And so they offered actually all the associates that had clerked a job. So I worked there for about a year and a half, and it just wasn't my cup of tea. So I started looking around, and that was when I was super lucky. It was the first interview I had, which was with Baker Hughes, which is an oilfield service company out of Houston. They've been bought and sold multiple times. I think there's still a Baker Hughes left. So I was surprisingly hired into this oil field industry, and I worked there for a couple years in Houston just as a staff attorney. And then when a position for Baker Hughes was split into a few different groups of subsidiaries, and they had a non-oil field group based out of Salt Lake City. And they fired their general counsel of that group and offered me the position. And that's when I transferred to Utah.
Oh, nice. And what year
Yeah.
was that?
I'm sorry?
What year was that?
I moved here in 92. Yes.
Oh, okay.
It was 92.
All right. Perfect. Was business law always the track for you, or was some other type of law something that had held more interest? What did that look like?
You know, I still don't think when I graduated from law school, I really knew what I wanted to do. I had classes I liked, but it was really about, fighting for those clerkships. And back then there were a lot of young lawyers and young law students looking for jobs, whether while they were in school or thereafter. I think that with that first job, I did a lot of business law. And then with Baker Hughes, it was basically all business law, unless you were a patent attorney or an employment attorney. You just kind of got put into the commercial. You're just doing a lot of commercial transactions, a lot of contract drafting and negotiating and reviewing. And then once I became general counsel to the group out here in Utah, then there were some, acquisitions and little buys and sells. And I really enjoyed that work very much.
Nice.
But in law school, I think everyone goes in thinking they're going to be a courtroom attorney. And first year, you get to do something called a mock trial. And I realized that I was horrifically afraid of public speaking, and that I did not ever want to set foot in a courtroom because it scared me to death. And so I started, focusing on everything but the litigation classes once we were able to elect, some of the classes we would take.
Very interesting. So let's move now into the conversation of, in general, what would you say you absolutely love about business law?
One thing?
Anything you want to say. It could be one thing, 5 things.
I think one thing I love is meeting new people and learning about new businesses, because so many businesses today weren't even businesses when I started. We didn't have computers. My first year as an attorney was when they wheeled a computer into my office. I think I've told you this story, Jason. I had a secretary, we had paralegals, and the secretary did everything. And my first or second year at the law firm, they brought in this monstrosity piece of equipment and said, "Here's your computer." And I remember looking at it and saying, "Oh God, this is just a phase. This will pass, right?" And it did not.
Nope.
My computer illiteracy, though, still reigns true today. So these days, I'm just fascinated at all the businesses that have been created and all the just stuff that I'm not like super right brain artsy fartsy, and I'm not sure I could have ever come up with any of these things.
Well, it's interesting because I mean, yeah, I mean, of course, there's like businesses that we don't even know exist, even still, that people are thriving with at this moment in time,
Mhm.
and the types of businesses that are going to be here 5, 6, 7 years from now.
Right.
I mean, they're going to be totally and diametrically different than anything we even see right now. I mean, there's full blown agencies. I mean, uh, Instagram marketing managers specifically. That thing didn't even exist not long ago.
No.
Even the very beginnings of Instagram, that position didn't exist because we were still trying to figure that out. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's very interesting. What would you say are maybe the top few things that you see business owners drop the ball on, and
Mm.
where they would need to or should be speaking to someone who specializes in business law?
Well, I think the first thing, which isn't needing to be speaking to a business attorney, the first thing is, with rare exception, I think that business owners need to know that you need capital to start a business. Um, it's very hard, with exceptions. There are those rare exceptions. I think it's very hard to start a business without being able to pay for the right professionals to help you start your business. And whether it's a website designer, whether it's your marketing, you're setting up your business, accounting functions, tax issues. And I think that I see a lot of businesses that, and it may not have been that they didn't have the capital, they just didn't spend it on those professionals, and they've been in business for a while, and they wonder why their businesses haven't grown, quite as quickly as they thought they would. And I think, having a great idea is fabulous, but getting it to market, and I don't mean necessarily like to a market, is a different matter. And there are exceptions to that. But I think that business owners, from my perspective and what I do, I see a lot of business owners who will go online, and I have no problem with people registering their corporation or their LLC online, and they just go along their merry way, and there are really no other governing documents. And before you know it, they've brought in another member or another shareholder, and you get several years down the road and everything's been verbal, or it's just not been documented right. And even to the point where they're wanting to sell the business and you can't even piece together who owns the business. And for a buyer, that's going to be troublesome, because if I'm representing a buyer buying a business, I want clear evidence and documentation showing me who has authority to sell this business, and are we actually getting 100% of the business. I think, too, another common mistake is people just register a DBA and they think that's an entity, and it's not. You're a sole proprietor.
Exactly.
You can have the world's greatest DBA, and you can operate and you can make money, but basically all of your personal assets are at risk. There's no liability protection with a DBA. Certainly you can have an LLC that has a DBA, and your LLC is where you get the protection.
Yep.
What else? Doing handshake deals.
Nope.
That's a good majority of my clients. Or they do deals and they sign someone else's contract without reading it. I can tell you right now that if you have a lawyer review that contract before you sign it, it's going to be a heck of a lot cheaper than down the road when there's a bump in the relationship and you have to hire a lawyer. and the lawyer tells you this is a terrible contract you signed.
Exactly. And
That's my day.
oh, it's and the catch is, I appreciate it, but at the same time, it's phenomenally problematic. So you've got a lot of people that they come up with a cool product or service, or a variation thereof, or their concept, and then they just run full force. I recommend 100% of the things you do in business should be in writing.
Oh, yes.
It doesn't matter if it's your best friend or your cousin or your uncle or the rando down the street. 100% of it should be in writing at all times. And it's not to say that you don't trust your family or you don't trust the rando down the street or whatever the situation is, but you should always be covering all of those bases and so-called crossing the T's and dotting the I's, because it's guaranteed at some point. Now, that point might be 6 months down the line. It might be 16 years down the line, but it's guaranteed there's going to become a problem with that.
Well, and I will tell you that some of my nastiest projects are best friends who started a company or families. The families, I just don't even understand. Money does crazy things to people, and you will see families blown up by owning a family business. You will see friendships dissolved, and it's actually heartbreaking in some instances, because you're trying to help a client and you're knowing that this is an irreparable relationship. Going down this road, there probably will not be a repair to these relationships. So I will say that especially friends who start a business and family members who start or are, succeed to a business of their parents or grandparents, those are the people who really need to talk to a business attorney.
Yeah. And the catch is, and I understand that, people are trying to do everything on a shoestring budget, and they think, gosh, spending this money now is too much, and I could reallocate this money to marketing or operations or payroll or, something along those lines. But the problem is, like you said just a second ago, if you don't do things right in the very beginning, that problem that would have maybe cost you maybe $500, maybe $1,500, whatever that looks like at this moment, will end up becoming $3,500 or $5,000 or $50,000, or potentially even worse, depending on if there's a merger or an acquisition or a succession plan or something, and things are unraveled. And then you have to hire attorneys and accountants to come and piecemeal it all back together. And that becomes ridiculously expensive.
It's ridiculously expensive. I can't tell you how many times a client has handed me a box and said, here are our governing documents. Some things unsigned, other things are partially signed. Can't tell whether they were ever sent out. Excuse me. That is not the way to run a business unless you want to run it into the ground, and you're going to have a very hard time selling it.
Yeah. Or they haven't been updated in 15 years.
Oh yeah, there's that too.
And the business that was once worth, $90,000 is now worth $15 million.
Well, or you see that 30 years ago, they have, their articles of incorporation filed, and it requires certain things. Let's say it requires 3 to 5 directors, and for 30 years, they've been operating with 2 directors. Just little things that can catch up with you. Yes. And I don't think that people who incorporate, your job's a lot harder than if you form an LLC. Right. Corporations require annual maintenance, if not more so than that. And there's documentation that has to be done on an annual basis. And there are ways to transfer shares, and there are ways not to transfer shares. it's so easy to do it the right way, at the beginning. Then, as you said, then to try to go back, you can't backdate 30 years worth of board and shareholder meetings, for instance.
Nope.
And I've had that situation more than once.
Well, and also that the concept of the corporate veil, meaning that you're separating yourself and your personal liability from the corporation's liability. If you're not crossing the T's and dotting the I's on the corporate side of things, that corporate veil ceases to exist.
Yeah, and thank you for pointing that out, because that's the reason why I've basically been talking about all of this. Is it's all about protecting your personal assets. And if someone sues your company and it turns out you haven't been following formalities, you've been commingling your private assets with your company's assets, you've been writing off personal items through your company expenses, anyone trying to get at your personal assets that wants to go beyond the assets of the company is going to try to pierce that corporate veil or LLC veil. And that's really dangerous.
Yes.
Really dangerous. And also, just to add as an aside, you need to have a really good commercial insurance broker too, who makes sure that you are adequately covered, not only in the right amounts, but in the right coverages.
Yep.
So there are just a lot of things that I think an attorney can help walk a business owner through.
Yeah, I totally agree. And and that's one of the big problems. And you and I have talked about this on a handful of occasions. You've got someone who works for a company and they think to themselves, "Dang, I can do this better and then make all the money."
Mhm.
The problem is that to an employee, that so-called all of the money, there's a lot of blind cost to them. They don't see the stacks of insurances and taxes and leases and all these
Right.
other things behind the veil, so to speak. And so when the person comes out and they start their own business, they're not really looking at the scope of the different types of insurances they should have. And it's always imperative, of course, to hire someone that's smarter than you, so-called, in a particular business segment, so you're not juggling all the balls. But at the same time, what you should know is at least some portion of that, so you can hire it out appropriately, but then make sure that it's all covered within the agreements, within the insurances, and so forth.
Correct. And your insurance does tie into every agreement you sign, or it should.
Yeah.
A lot of agreements require certain types and amounts of insurance. And if you're just signing off on these things, you've already breached an agreement by potentially not having had the correct insurance. A lot of times it'll be a laundry list of types of insurance, but there are certain things that your particular business it doesn't apply to. But you've got to be sure that you're you're striking those in a contract. And then you had mentioned employees leaving or people leaving and starting their own business. Let's just talk a second about employee issues.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there are too many business owners out there who have been in business for a while and have had multiple employees that haven't had an employee leave and take their customer list,
Yep.
solicit their clients, solicit other employees to come work for them. So those are things that a good business attorney, those are things that we will put in place in the beginning, so that when you onboard an attorney, you've got a good, strong, and it's not an employment agreement, as in you agree to work for X amount of years for this amount of money. It is I call it an employee letter, where they agree not to disclose your confidential proprietary information.
Mm-hmm.
When they leave for a period of 2 to 3 years, choose pretty much what I use. They're not going to solicit your clients for a competitive business, and they're also not going to solicit your other employees. Non-competes are really tricky now. They work when you're selling a business or buying a business. The former owner can agree to a pretty broad geographic territory as well as a long period of time in Utah. Other than that, and a couple of very specific exceptions, non-competes are limited to a year, and courts do not favor non-competes when you have employees sign them. They have to be very, very limited in range. So, for instance, you can't have an electrician sign a non-compete to, if he leaves or gets fired, he or she can't compete in the state of Utah, even if you limit it to 1 year. That's not going to fly. It may not even fly to, say, in Salt Lake City. There are courts that will sometimes narrow to a number of blocks or a certain mile radius. So non-competes, I find them, they've been hanging around for a while, especially older businesses. And number one, they're too long and the scope is way too broad, and they're going to be unenforceable.
Yeah, that's what I've seen as well in a handful of cases. So, I mean, we could deep dive, and we have great conversation about this kind of stuff all the time. But I know that we could probably be on for 2 hours and not even scratch the tip of the iceberg. So I think it's important that anybody watching this that is questioning if they need a business attorney or not, I'm assuming that you would have at least a friendly conversation at the beginning, just to say, hey, yeah, like your scopes are in need of my services or not. I'm assuming. Is that correct?
For your friends and followers, I will do that. I do usually charge for my consultations. The reason I do that, and I think that I don't understand, I think a lot of people, but I will for your people.
Oh, thank you.
Anyone who calls me from this podcast, I liken it to being a doctor. When you don't know what's wrong with you and you go to the doctor's office, does anyone really expect for that time that the doctor spends to be free? Agreed. No, we all pay for that initial consultation. I found myself, and I'm just going to explain this because it comes up a lot. I used to do a lot of free consultations, and what I found was people would talk to me for an hour and a half, and then I never hear from them again. Or I'd see that they are out lawyer shopping afterwards. Now they know what they need done, and they're going to go shop for a cheaper lawyer. I'm not cheap.
But you're extremely good.
I'm pretty easy to work with. Yes, but I would be happy to speak with any of your viewers for free.
Oh, wow, you are amazing. I was not expecting that, by the way. That is extremely generous of you to offer. So I thank you so much.
Not for hours.
No way.
But for
so
an
you listening?
Consult.
It's not for hours. She's just going to sit down with you and sort of give you like a sort of synopsis of what you need. But I'll tell you, I've worked with Cathy on a handful of occasions, and of course, I always have to, be, I can't say. You see what I'm saying in the financial arena. I've got to be careful with what I say. But Cathy is extremely awesome at what she does. She's extremely well versed. She's been doing this quite some time. So you said that you've been doing it for over 35 years, but didn't you just have like your 44th birthday?
So, yeah, this is why I love you, Jason.
10 or 15?
I just love you.
No,
I was a child genius.
I love it. That's awesome.
I graduated from law school when I was 10.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, you're funny, but back at you with all the compliments, Jason. Same to you. I feel the same about you. And you're always the once or twice we've gotten to work together on a real project has been eye-opening for me. And not to mention your greatest trait is your tremendously huge heart.
Oh, thank you. That's very nice of you to say. I appreciate that so much.
Tear up now.
For real. So Cathy, what geographic locations do you cover? Is it just the state of Utah at this time, or is
I'm licensed in Texas. I have an inactive license there. Just means I haven't taken the CLE or the legal classes we have to take every year. Pretty much, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but there are certain things that lawyers can do that are out of state. We can't go to court, which I don't do anyway. But I do have clients in other states. Ethically, we just have to ensure that we've researched any potential differences in law. But I would say most of my clients are here in Utah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. And from Logan to St. George and everywhere in between, or?
Everywhere.
Okay.
Everywhere.
But currently you are located in the Salt Lake Valley.
I am. This is my home office, which I live downtown, and then my office is downtown. And then I'm in Park City once or twice a week for various reasons. And at times I can see clients up there.
Okay. That's awesome. I definitely appreciate that. And then I'm going to put your phone number and your email address in the body of the YouTube channel. Is that okay with you? And is that
that's perfect.
To get a hold of you?
That's perfect.
Okay, perfect. Then I'll be doing that. So anybody watching this, if you want to reach out to Cathy, just look down inside of the body of the information on YouTube, and you'll be able to find all of her contact information there. So Cathy, I'd like to wrap it up by asking you one final question, and that is, what is one of your favorite songs or favorite quotes, or both?
Okay, I will give you a more classy one, which is from Shakespeare.
Awesome.
The first thing we do, let's kill all lawyers. But one of my favorites is, if it bleeds, we can kill it.
Nice.
Don't ask me why.
So that was from Predator, wasn't it?
Yep.
That's hilarious. And then do you have a favorite song?
Changes every day.
Hey, that's totally cool. It's a tough one to try to nail down, that, isn't it?
It is. And, I'm more into like murder and serial killer podcasts than I am into music. So that maybe just had everyone who thought they might call me decide not to.
You're hilarious.
All my ex-husbands are still alive.
That's a good thing. Awesome, Cathy. Well, gosh, it's really been a sincere pleasure having you on the show and being able to learn more about your history and your practice, and being able to share you with my network. Is there anything that just off the top of your head that you think we may have missed that should be necessary to go ahead and talk about on this?
I think we've covered a lot of things, certainly enough to get business owners thinking about where, at what level they feel their business is and what help they may need. And it's not always going to be a business attorney. And like Jason, I have a great network of other professionals, and I am not afraid to send work elsewhere if it's not in my wheelhouse. I do some commercial real estate. I do business law, but I am with an incredibly reputable firm that does just about everything. So I bring in clients and I'm not comfortable doing the work, or it's not efficient for me to do the work, and I will hand it off to another capable attorney at the firm. And if it's something we don't specialize in, I have great referrals for those.
Awesome. Well, that's great to hear. All right, Cathy. Well, again, thank you so much for being on the Always the Journey TV show and dedicating your time so we can learn. I'm going to, if you don't mind, place you in the green room for a few moments while I wrap up the show. Is that all right with you?
Thanks for having me, Jason. It was fun.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure.
Okay.
Thanks, Cathy. We'll talk to you in just one sec.
Okay. Bye.
All right. So there you go. Cathy Campbell, a business attorney. So if you have any questions, please reach out to her. The information is going to be in the body below of the video. Episode number 68 in the books, Always the Journey TV. Please throw a like on the video. That would be greatly appreciated. And also subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. But anyway, we're going to rock and roll with our outro music. So thank you very much for tuning in, and have a wonderful rest of your week.